The futility of boundaries with a borderline, or are you man enough to handle me? So before my recovery, I spent a lot of time doing one of two things. One, trying to decide if she was crazy, unstable, and toxic, or trying to make it work. Again, this is the key part that keeps us in abuse, whether we're in the relationship or out of the relationship or in some kind of up and down cycle. It's the rumination and the obsession. For me, the only thing that broke that cycle was a 12-step program for codependency. Check out other videos I have on that. You can also hit me up on Reddit. The link for it is in the description. As this video, as I'm posting this, I'm currently an available sponsor. So if you need some sponsorship, if you want to work the steps, just hit me up. If I'm not available when you do, I'm happy to connect people with others, because this really broke the cycle for me. So let's get into this. Okay, as I've stated in past videos, I dated a string of people who I'm certain have BPD. And I did this before getting into recovery for a decade, friends. Okay. Now, prior to recovery, I actually got better at handling and juggling the symptoms and emotions with each new one. And it's because I established better boundaries right from the beginning. So why and how did I do that? So in my first relationship, I had weak boundaries, and my only saving grace would be to walk away from the relationship or turn it into an open relationship. It was my first really toxic relationship. I'd had good ones before. So the behavior to me was kind of strange. What are you doing, And I was willing to walk away. I wasn't so infatuated or in love yet. But once I crossed the threshold of infatuation to love, it became harder and harder to set up boundaries because I had a lot to lose. I didn't want to lose this person in my life. And also, I had no idea that I was in something that is abusive. When I came out of it, in other words, when I was discarded, I read dating advice online because I'd done all these dumb things you do when you go into a breakup and you do all the wrong things, which is write a letter, beg for them back, all of this crazy, crazy stuff. And so then I went online, how can I get my girlfriend back? And this led me into finding all kinds of dating advice. Some of it was really helpful, but probably it's more helpful for someone who is healthier, who doesn't have a severe mental illness. So let's talk about this. I read dating advice online that talked about how to have firm boundaries as a guy in a hetero relationship, how to quote unquote lead a woman, and how to pass shit tests. So shit tests are things that women can do in relationships, especially in the beginning, but they can do it throughout your relationship, where they're basically testing your boundaries to see how strong you are. It can be small things in the beginning, like trying to reschedule the date, or change the location of where you're going to. And the idea is to see how much they can push you around. And a woman who's a little healthier doesn't want to be able to push you around. It's maybe this traditional idea of, a man as a protector, this sort of thing. So if you'll do anything for her, well, maybe you'll do anything for anyone. And so it's hard to trust you that you would actually protect her and the kids, and that you wouldn't cheat, or that you wouldn't let people walk all over you, right? So she's saying if she can walk all over you, other people will, and that's that. If you pass the shit tests by showing that you actually do have boundaries and you stick to it, she'll respect you more and love you more. If you don't pass these and you give in, she may temporarily be happy, but she'll unconsciously lose respect for you, and she'll continue to shit test you, and she'll do it again and again and again. And if you keep losing, she'll leave you. This is kind of, 101 for heteronormative dating, however we want to label it nowadays. And this idea that you need to be masculine and strong and a little bit more stoic and stay in your frame, and you become too feminine if you're giving in all of the time. I think that there is truth to this. I don't know if it's always the truth, but I do think that there is truth to this. But you can see how from the outside, this looks just like splitting into a final discard, right? Is this not what's happening in our relationships, where we're having our boundaries pushed and pushed and pushed, we're feeling betrayed, and over time through the relationship, we become more and more codependent. In other words, we're putting their needs more and more at the front. We're putting up with way more shit than we would in the beginning, and then eventually we're getting discarded. So I went from this happening to going to dating websites and going, oh, I see where I was wrong. I didn't have strong enough boundaries. So I'm going to try to find a way to do that. So I can't tell you if whether or not this thing works in a healthy relationship, because for the most part of the last decade, I've mainly had toxic relationships. I have had some healthy ones, but if you can imagine, I don't really want intimacy as a codependent, so I pushed away people who are healthier in favor of those that weren't, in some pretty devastating ways. I had one relationship in particular that was very good, very healthy, but it was like too calm for me. So I pushed this person away and I went with the drama. Now, this is what leads us into the paradox. So the thing is this, there's a paradox in setting up boundaries with someone with BPD, because they need you to be firm, but you always get the feeling, and it can totally be true, that if you're too firm, they'll leave, right? They'll leave for someone else, because ultimately they don't, they want to feel like they're in control. But let me break this down in a few more details. So first of all, setting up good boundaries in the beginning is key. And it was key for me, because it's really, really hard to walk things back once you've given in. So people suffer more if things are taken away from them than if they never have something. Let me repeat that again. People suffer more if they lose something like a beautiful home and sports car versus if they never had one in the first place. So this I got really good at. So why didn't it ever work? So what happened in my case? Okay, so there were two problems. The first is with a partner, you're always getting shifting sands, moving goalposts. Okay, so what's okay and acceptable on one day is different than another. And to keep up with this is really, really, really difficult. It's like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen this video of like the hard level on Mario. It's like this. So on Monday, for example, it's okay to say, hey, baby. On Tuesday, it's misogynistic. By Friday, if I'm not saying it, I'm being too fearful. Are you being fearful? What's wrong? A week later, she hates it because I'm only doing it because she told me to. So she doesn't even respect her own wants and values. So in this way, you have to be even more stoic. Like you have to even lay out everything. So the thing is that I would get surprise attacked. So it wasn't just that the goalposts were shifting and changing and the rules were changing, but it's that when the rules had changed, at least with my ex, she would come in and just blow up on me. I would be like reading a book, doing something super chill, and then the fight would just begin. And I wasn't ready for it. I was totally vulnerable. And it could be like right after having like a perfect day together or a wonderful breakfast or like whatever. It's totally unpredictable. So the issue with keeping up boundaries in a toxic relationship is that you are constantly under attack. Your boundaries are constantly under attack. So you have to remain stoic like the whole damn time, which is impossible. Because at some point you're going to be weak. You're going to be vulnerable or you'll give in. Like right now, I have COVID. So I'm a little bit more weak and vulnerable. And if someone were to invade my boundaries, I might have a harder time to actually like keep that boundary up. Or maybe I had like a bad day or I'm tired or, whatever it is. But you'll lose some kind of ground. To reestablish that ground, especially with someone with BPD, it's going to be a big fight. And then they're going to even know like that this is a vulnerable place. And if you end up going to war in this one place, they're going to know that that's your weak point. And they might keep attacking that. So anytime you show vulnerability, it will be used against you. And as we've all experienced, the cycles of attack and abuse get shorter and shorter. So they might needle you all day with little jabs and then hit you with a big nuclear bomb later. And certainly my last relationship, this is what ended up happening. It would be all these little needles where if I were to fight every single needle, it would be crazy and even I would feel kind of needy. So in defense, what I would end up doing is I would just try to be so stoic that I wouldn't even show my weakness. So what that meant is I would stop to defend my boundary because it was like, I have to do this all the time. So instead of putting up the boundary, I would pretend like I wasn't bothered by it. So she would call me a nickname that I didn't like. And while I was stood up for a while, at some point I would just give in. At some point I would just pretend, or if there's something new, I would just pretend that it didn't bother me because I thought, if she doesn't know, then she'll stop doing it. And the goal again is to be stoic. But when you're being relentlessly attacked, stoicism means nothing. Because in truth, like you are not a brick wall, you're not a robot, you are a living, breathing human being with emotions and needs and desires. And in order to try to stay stoic in these relationships, we have to get rid of these. Strangely enough, and I think I'll do another video on it another time, is that the codependent secretly wants to become a narcissist. Because we know that if we're a narcissist, we won't introject so much. So we won't take on all the bad things. We'll be able to project out to them and, fight back, fight fire with fire, and then we can keep this relationship. Essentially, we try to do that. So the first problem, again, is shifting goalposts. So the first is that the boundaries are going to continually be tested. You're going to be vulnerable at some point. You are going to give in. And once you give in, there's a place for her to attack later if she's splitting. And you just can't hold this forever. It's just impossible. Like, the second problem is splitting, and splitting can come because of love or her fear of abandonment. Now, when she turns you black, she's gonna go against one of your boundaries where you are really vulnerable, where you've already put up a boundary and said no. So how many warnings? Do we get 5 warnings, 10 warnings, 20 warnings? At one point, should you break up? Those are for smaller things. But what about bigger things like, cheating or flirting in front of you or doing things that is obviously going to upset you? They're going to push a boundary in a way that you can't walk it back, if it really hurts. So you stay. So the BPD test is to feel safe in the relationship. So she wants to know that her vulnerable child is protected. And there's 2 ways to feel protected as a child. One is acceptance and the other is boundaries. Boundaries actually do make children feel safe because they know their limits. Okay, and acceptance of accepting me for who I am. Like, these are the 2 ways to feel safe. And in these relationships, we're attempting to kind of do both at the borderline, where we're trying to just accept them. Like, okay, yeah, I see you freaked out. I know it's not personal to me. I'm going to be stoic about this, even though what you did hurt me to death. Or I'm going to be angry or firm or set up a boundary. And it's really hard to juggle this because the behavior is so unpredictable. But the more you put up with their shit, the more she paints you black, and you will feel more safe. And she might miss you after discard if you were reliable. So if you were like a total doormat, she might come back around, or she could just keep you to trampoline off of into a new relationship and just use that. If you love me, you'll let me do blah, blah, blah. Now, blah, blah, blah could be as small as just canceling plans, or blah, blah, blah can be cheating on you with your best friend. She'll make you think once things are over, when you get that final discard, she's going to do 2 things. So one, she's going to say, you never really showed me love. Like, I did all the feelings of love. And the second is she's going to call you out on the weakness that you had. So how about holding a strong boundary? Like, if you really are good and you go, no, Jesse, I can hold a strong boundary. I know I can do it. In my experience, the problem here is that at some point they're going to cross a line when you should leave them. So again, guys, girls, I got real good at keeping firm boundaries in the beginning. And at some point they would cross a boundary with me where I would have to leave them. So either I would leave them and be completely heartbroken, which I've done. I've left when I was totally heartbroken, didn't want to leave because I promised myself, no, I got to hold this boundary. But it was excruciating, damn difficult. And it wouldn't stop the ruminations. So they'll do something where they go too far and hurt your core. And if you have strong boundaries, you would leave. Maybe the first time it happens, you did leave for a bit. Now, this also gets you into a problem because you still came back, right? So they know that they can cross that boundary again because you still came back. But also, by leaving them, even if it's for a week or a few days, you also show that you're untrustworthy. So now part of them has evidence about why they cannot trust you. So I can't trust you because you don't keep your word, like you didn't stay away. And I can't trust you because you came back and you left me, and so you could leave me at any time. So now they have motive to drop you like it's nothing because you once did it to them. They can even reference that. So I want you to see that this is a paradox. It doesn't matter. You hold up a strong boundary. They cross a boundary that's too big. You will leave to enforce that boundary. But now you've triggered their abandonment. They know that you all do it again. You're screwed no matter what. Whether you give in or walk away, the devaluation cycle begins. If you have good boundaries, they will step on them and force you to dump them. If you don't, they'll do it again and again and again and again and again and again and again until they're left with no choice but to leave you or to use you as a platform to have multiple affairs or set up a new relationship. I've got another video called The Final Discard if you want to understand what's happening inside. So if you're asking yourself, am I strong-willed enough to be with them, to have strong enough boundaries? In my case, am I man enough to be with her? Right? This is what I ask. Am I man enough? Because I always felt emasculated afterwards. And the answer always is no. Because if I were man enough, I would have left after the first betrayal. It's that simple. I didn't act like a man and I was emasculated. And it's because when that first thing happened, I didn't just up and leave. And we learn over time, especially if we lean more towards codependency, that we give in and we give in and we give in and we give in. And then the final discard is going to be faster. It's totally inevitable. Or at least years and years of pain and betrayal and lies is what you're in for. So please be cautious. There's no way to set up enough boundaries. The best you could do is become a narcissist. But I don't think you really can do that. And I found myself later on in my dating, and once I learned about personality disorders and I was still trying to manage these relationships, is I thought I just had to have better boundaries and I had to be like, fight fire with fire, be more narcissistic. But the thing is that if you do have empathy and you're fighting fire with fire, you still get hurt by hurting the other person. So it never worked. And it came to a point where when I was trying to use that, I had a denial of myself. And so I pulled away from that. If you're asking yourself, am I man enough? Am I strong enough? The answer always is no. Because if you were strong enough, if you were quote unquote man enough, you would have left them after the first or second split, after the first betrayal.